Hey guys, welcome back to a brand new video. In today's video, we are going to be looking at the 2022 gubernatorial elections and who I think is going to hold the majority in the NGA when it's all said and done. So, before we get started with this video, two things. I'm trying to hit 5.5k by my birthday, which is October 3rd. That's a lot of subscribers, and I don't think we're going to get it. So I'm hoping that we have a couple of videos that do quite well. So if you're not subscribed, please subscribe. Also share with a friend. And also, I forgot to mention this, if you got vaccinated recently, DM me on Twitter, Instagram, or email me. I'll do whatever video you want. I have a pretty small base here, but I'm trying to do my part and trying to help everyone, give everyone the helpful push in their bump in the right direction to get vaccinated. So, yeah. Now, I think that is all for before we get started, and yeah, so let's get into it right now. Disclaimer, this is going to be a scenario for if the 2022 gubernatorial elections were held tomorrow. So, things are going to change before 2022. Some races are going to become competitive. Some races are going to become less competitive. I've said this before, but I'll say it again. If we saw a 2020 Senate prediction in August 2019, we would have had, Georgia is likely Republican, right? So things are going to change, and do not expect this to be the final scenario. But as of right now, this is where I think we're at. Also, you have to remember national partisanship, which is essentially the amount that either party wins the congressional vote by in a certain year. So in 2018, Democrats won the congressional vote by 8.6% nationwide. 2020, they won it by about 3%. So there was a shift to the right, but because 2018 was a blue wave year, 2020 was more of a neutral year. So yeah. Now, for 2022 right now, I expect the Democrats to narrowly win the generic ballot or congressional popular vote, whatever you want to call it. I think they're going to win it by about a point, which is not great for them. And the most recent time they lost the congressional, the generic ballot was in 2016. They lost it by about a point, where they gained a couple seats in the House, but they still were quite far away from a majority. And, there were a couple things going against them in 2016. Hillary Clinton did win the popular vote, and how congressional Democrats actually ran behind her in most cases. But the last red wave we actually had was in 2014, where Republicans won the generic ballot by 9%, which led to them picking up nine Senate seats and like 60 House seats. So 2014 was the last red wave we had, and 2018 was the last blue wave we had. And usually a wave is when a certain party wins the generic ballot by at least 7%. I don't think it's going to happen either way. I think the Republican ceiling is like winning it by 3%. The Democrats, their best case scenario, they'd win it by 5%. So the Democrats have a higher ceiling, but right now I think the national environment, although the Democrats are going to win it, they have to win, just to get a little more analytical here. Democrats, when they generally gain seats, they have to win the generic ballot by at least 4%. And if they're on track to win it by only a point, that's not great news for them. It's not terrible news. It doesn't foreshadow a red wave like people are going to say, some people are going to say it is, but it's still not great for them. So we're going to get into it with our safe Democratic states. These are states that I think the Democratic Party is going to hold on to or pick up by more than 12%. And there are a couple we need to talk about here. So Hawaii is safe. New Jersey, I think, for now is safe. That'll actually be this year. It'll be this November. Phil Murphy's going to be running for re-election. Lay's pull out him up 16. He could win by a little less. I think he'll win by like 13 or 14, but that's still quite safe. Rhode Island should be safe. So yeah, I think that's it. And also I'll put California safe. And before you freak out, for the recall, I think Newsom's, as of right now, and I'll definitely make a video talking about that, at least one before, maybe two before the recall happens. I think Newsom's on track to win by around 7 or 8 right now. That could change, but as of right now, that's what I think. But in 2022, assuming I'm correct, and assuming he does not get recalled, just runs for re-election 2022 against Jenner, Cox, Elder, or Falcon, or whoever the Republicans run, I think it'll be a safe Democrat no matter what. So, yeah. Now, I think that those are all safety states. Virginia, actually, no, we're not going to address that yet. So, GOP, they've got quite a few. South Dakota was actually pretty close in 2018. It was a 4-point victory for Kristi Gnome. Actually, I'll pull up the election results from 2018. Kristi Gnome only beat Billy Sutton by about 4%, and she did significantly worse than Donald Trump in nearly everywhere in the state. So, some people think that's going to be, close. I think she'll win by like 25. She'll run a little bit behind Trump, but I don't think that it's going to be too significant, and I think she should win especially because Billy Sunday was a really unique candidate. He was a populist pro-gun Democrat, and he's not going to run again. Oklahoma's safe. Kansas we're not going to touch yet because there is an incumbent Democratic governor. Arkansas, Tennessee, Alabama, Massachusetts. If Charlie Baker, people are saying he's not going to run again. I think he is. If he doesn't run again, it's the other way. It's safe Democrat. It really varies because, for those of you who don't know, Massachusetts is obviously a super blue state, but Charlie Baker is a really popular Republican there. He's kind of a moderate Republican who does quite well with Democrats too. In 2018, he won re-election with 2/3 of the vote, so he's quite a popular figure there. So if he runs for re-election, I do think he'd win by a safe margin. If he does not run for re-election, it'll definitely go the other way. Vermont, Phil Scott. Chris Sununu, if Sununu runs in New Hampshire, it's safe, but I think he's going to run for Senate, so we're not going to touch that just yet. Also, Alaska's safe for Mike Dunleavy. He's not the most popular figure, but the Democrats have kind of given up on this race already. And unless they run someone, actually prominent, I don't think it'll be competitive at all. So, some likely Democratic states, I will have Oregon as likely D, just because it's an open seat. Kay Brown, actually in 2018, Kay Brown, who was actually not quite popular at the time, she had a pretty bad performance there as well. She actually ran significantly behind Biden. She only won by 6.4%, which is, pretty bad for a Democrat. She ran behind Biden by about 10%, so she did not do very well. And you can even look at some of the counties that Biden won in 2020 that were swingy. Deschutes County, home to Bend. It's kind of the border between rural Oregon and more urban North. She lost it by 10, and this was a Biden plus 9 county. Clackamas County, which is a suburb of Portland, she lost by 4. That was a Clinton County, and it was also a Biden County. I think Biden went by 8. So she did quite poorly here, and the Democrats might actually improve on her 2018 margin just because she won't be running for re-election again, and because she got a little more popular since 2018. Also because Newt Bueller is probably not going to run again. But I just think likely is the correct rating for the state right now. Colorado should be likely as well. I'm not saying that Jared Polis has a realistic chance of losing, especially because the Republicans are not going to try to field an actual candidate to run against him. Walker Stapleton was a half-decent candidate, but he still lost by 10. So, Colorado I don't think is going to flip. New Mexico could be a little more competitive because of Michelle Lujan Grisham's scandal. She allegedly groped a staffer and then paid them $60,000 in hush money. So, that is not something you want on your record as a politician, but for now I think it's likely. The scandal hasn't been getting a ton of media attention. We can debate whether that's media bias or because they don't want to cover it for whatever reason, but she hasn't really sunk in the polls yet, or she hasn't really, gotten any, no one's really talking about it outside of people on Twitter, so I think it's likely for now, but if her opponent doesn't let her off the hook for that, and, it starts getting media attention, this race could get a little more interesting, but for now, likely, a year away, likely is the best rating for it. Illinois, I think, is going to be likely. J.B. Pritzker is, pretty popular figure in the state right now. In 2018, he picked it up. He beat Bruce Rauner by 16. Bruce Rauner was the incumbent, so it was a Democratic pickup, and, J.B. Pritzker did quite well there in 2018, but I think he might do a little worse in 2020. He'll probably win by 10 or 11, so that's just my thoughts on the race. The Republicans have a couple of candidates they could run. I'd say the front runner right now is Adam Kinsinger, whose seat, it's no secret that his seat is getting eliminated in redistricting, and even if his seat did survive redistricting, he wouldn't survive the primary because he has 10 primary challengers who are all very pro-Trump in a very pro-Trump district. He's kind of viewed as a rhino, so he would have better prospects statewide in trying to unseat Pritzker than in running for re-election in a seat where he'd lose his primary. And, the reason that Pritzker should be a little concerned about Kinsinger is because he'd have solid appeal to the Chicago suburbs that have been bolting to the left in recent memory, and, some downstate areas, especially the areas down here. Alexander County is a small example, but, they've been shifting to the right. So, there's small potential for Pritzker losing. I just don't see it happening right now. Minnesota's another likely D state. I originally had it as Liam. I'm just going to move it up to likely because Tim Walz should not be losing this race. I don't think that he's going to lose. I just originally said it could be closer, but Biden won it by 7. I had him winning it by 5. So I've had a history of underestimating Democrats in Minnesota in the past. So I guess you could say that I should give the Minnesota Democrats a little bit of leeway here. Also, the Minnesota Republican Party is kind of in ruins right now. I'm not going to talk about the scandal too much because it's not a kid-friendly topic, but if you want, you can look it up. But the Minnesota GOP is in shambles right now. So I don't think that they're going to be very in a very good position to unseat a pretty popular governor. Virginia is another likely D state. I think Virginia right now, Glenn Youngkin's probably going to lose by 5 or 6%. A couple months ago, it was lean actually, because Youngkin, there was a time where he was surging in the polls, but since then his campaign has been quite underwhelming, as is Terry McAuliffe's. But Youngkin has to run a good campaign to win in a Biden plus 10 state, so I think likely is the best rating for it right now. I'm not talking about Virginia, New Jersey, and California too much in this video because we can talk about them in separate videos leading up to the election that are happening. California in a month, these in 3 months. Maryland it'll be safe by margin. Larry Hogan's term limited, so the Democrats are going to pick it up, but likely, I'll rate it as likely because I never rate seats that are held by one party to flip by a safe margin. Same with Alabama in 2020 Senate. Doug Jones was obviously going to lose by like 20. He was going to get hosed, but there was no. I never had it as safe. I always had it as likely. What else do we have? New York should be safe. I thought Cuomo was still in office. He's not. Catherine Hochul is probably going to be running for re-election there, and she actually is from Buffalo, so I think that she could get primaried by some downstate New Yorker, but for now, safe no matter what. Connecticut should be likely. Ned Lamont, he only won by 3, I believe, in 2018, and that's not really a strong showing for him, especially in a blue wave, but at the time he was very unpopular. He's gotten more popular since then. Bob Stefanowski was a decent challenger, so I think right now a safe or likely Democrat is the most accurate rating. So, yeah. Now, for our likely Republican states, I'll start off with Kansas. This is my hotter take, I've always been kind of someone who's been saying that Laura Kelly's not really a strong candidate and that she's not realistically going to win. And, she's decently popular. Her approval ratings are alright. They're kind of, I think it's 45% of voters approve her, 40% disapprove. So she's not unpopular. She's not, someone who the Republican Party absolutely despises. She's been, quite moderate as a governor. But as a Democrat in Kansas who has not made an effort to consider herself a conservative, she's just your average Democrat. She's not hated by Kansans, but she's not loved the way that someone like Andy Beshear, John Bell Edwards, or Phil Scott is. Because Phil Scott in Vermont is the best example of a governor in a state that's really partisan the other way. Vermont, Biden won it by 30, and Scott won re-election by 35. So, basically, Scott won voters who voted for Biden. So, he has that appeal. Kelly doesn't have that to Trump voters because Kelly is just an average Democrat, whereas Phil Scott's a very liberal Republican who has much more appeal. And that's why he won re-election in 2020. He's going to win again in 2022. And Laura Kelly is probably going to get downed by Jeff Collier, who lost the primary to Chris Kobach in 2018 by 600 votes. It was very close. Kobach was a really unpopular candidate, and he lost to Laura Kelly by 5. So Kelly, she won in 2018 in a blue wave, and it was just because she did so well in the KC suburbs. She won counties that Barack Obama didn't win. She ran ahead of him, like 25 in some cases. She ran ahead of Joe Biden by 10 to 15 in a lot of these areas, especially in rural Kansas. She did significantly better than Joe Biden in rural Kansas, especially with these majority Hispanic counties down here that were solid for Trump. Biden got about, in Finney County, Biden got 28% of the vote. Kelly only lost it by 8. So she did much better than Joe Biden in rural Kansas. That was in a blue wave against a really bad candidate, and things just aren't going to go her way again this time, unless Chris Kobach gets the nomination. That's probably a toss-up. But for right now, Kelly's probably going to lose, and I think she's going to lose by more than people think. I think most of us agree that Kelly's toast, but I think she'll lose by 7 or 8. So that's my bold prediction for this video. Kelly's done. Texas, Greg Abbott's in Allen West. West had a scandal recently. He's probably not going to unseat Abbott. Abbott also still has some popularity left. He won by 13 in 2018, so he ran 10 points ahead of Ted Cruz. But I think he'll win re-election. He's gotten a little less popular. He's gotten a little more, hated by Democrats in his state than he was in 2018. But I still think he'll win by 10 at the end of the day. Iowa and Ohio, these are two states that I like to compare a lot. The Ohio Senate race could get a little interesting with Josh Mandel being the GOP nominee and him being quite problematic. But the governor's race, we essentially have two Democratic mayors going up against each other. John Cranley from Cincinnati and Nan Whaley from Dayton. So, it'll be an interesting primary seeing two southwestern Ohio mayors going up at it, but it'll be likely Republican no matter what happens. Mike DeWine could get primaried, though, so that'll be interesting to watch. Iowa, on the other hand, was pretty close in 2018. Fred Hubbell came within 3 points of beating Kim Reynolds. And Kim Reynolds not the most popular governor, but she's still someone who I think is favored to win re-election, especially in the year that Republicans are going to do better than they did in 2018, which, if she could survive, a blue wave year in 2018 where Democrats won the Iowa House popular vote by 4%. She'll be fine in 2022. Unless something drastically changes in Iowa, I think she's going to win by like 9 or 10. She'll probably actually outrun Trump because she, for whatever reason, has some amount of crossover appeal to Democrats in, Story County, or I said Story, but I meant Polk County and Johnson County, which are the two biggest Democratic counties in the state. Now, I believe we have one more likely. No, we have one more. Oops. South Carolina. Joe Cunningham is a pretty good candidate for Democrats. And I've said this before, he's mostly running just to kind of move Democrats forward in the state. He knows he's not going to win, but he's mostly running just to move Democrats forward. And, James Smith came within 8 points of beating out Henry McMaster in 2018. I think that Joe Cunningham has a very slim chance of beating out Henry McMaster. He won by 8 in a blue wave, and I think Cunningham's going to win or going to lose by like 10 or 11. So Henry McMaster is going to do a little better than he did in 2018. So, yeah. Now, for our lean Democrat states, starting off with Nevada, this is a state that people have been increasingly bullish on the Democratic Party, and Steve Sisolak, since last month, since I last did these predictions, we've seen some polling that has indicated that Steve Sisolak is more popular than originally anticipated. He was perceived to be an unpopular governor for a while, and, we saw some polls that had him being even more favorable than Joe Biden and Kathleen Cortez Masto in the state. So, according to these polls, for whatever reason, he's popular there. I'm not going to say that I trust polls because, they had a pretty disastrous performance in 2020, especially in Nevada, Like, I've been saying this for a year now. Polls in Nevada, Joe Biden was also in Nevada by like 7 or 8% based on the polling, and it just never really made sense because there was never the potential for Joe Biden to really do significantly better than Hillary Clinton in Clark County, which is home to Las Vegas, and he was always going to do a little better in Washoe, but I still would think that there's no really area for Joe Biden to do better than 4 or 5 points in Nevada. So he won it by 2.4, and the polls underestimated the Donald Trump there. I don't know why that took me so long to process, but anyways, long way of me saying I don't trust polls that much, and I'm going to keep Nevada as lean Democrat for now, because it's really the definition of a lean Democratic state. It's Democrats are going to win, but it could flip. Or probably going to win. That's uncontradictory. Another lean Democratic state, I believe, is Georgia. Georgia would be their second pickup so far, because I had Maryland, but Georgia's more important because in 2018, Stacey Abrams came within 2 points of beating Brian Kemp, and, there were allegations of voter fraud in Georgia. So it was alleged by the Abrams campaign that Brian Kemp, who was Secretary of State at the time, meaning he was basically monitoring his own election, that he rejected tens of thousands of ballots that would have handed Abrams the election. And there are, now is not the time to get into election fraud claims, but there is some legitimacy behind those claims. There were ballots that were rejected, but I'm not going to get into the topic of could Stacey Abrams have won, because that is a bad idea. But the bottom line is, Kemp won very, very nearly in 2018 with a lot of things going for him. In 2022, things are going to be different because Georgia has shifted significantly to the left since then. And even though it'll only have been 4 years, 2 years later, despite, in 2018, Democrats won the popular vote by 8%. In 2020, they won it by 4, or Biden won it by 4, and he flipped Georgia. So Georgia is shifting blue no matter what happens, and I still think that Stacey Abrams is a huge part of blue Georgia. And I think she's going to run for governor. She might not, but I think as of right now she is. She's kind of said she's planning on doing it, although we haven't heard much from her as of late. But I'm assuming she runs him, and I'm assuming she runs against Kemp, who's now become much more unpopular since then with his handling of COVID, with his kind of unpopularity within his own party, especially the more right-wing part of his party that believed that the election was rigged, that he didn't do anything to fix it in the state of Georgia, which was very close. So I think that Kemp just is in a really bad spot right now, and he's not very popular, and I just think that Stacey Abrams would probably beat him, especially after Georgia went blue in 2020. So for our next lean Democratic state, I have Pennsylvania. In Pennsylvania, I'm significantly more bullish on the Democrats in the governor's race than in the Senate race, and I'll tell you why. So in 2018, Tom Wolf won the governorship by 17%, which is quite a strong showing. He did very well in the suburbs of Philadelphia. He actually ran ahead of Joe Biden in Chester County, which is quite impressive because Biden did very well there. He actually won in Beaver County, which is kind of, I guess you could say, ancestral Democrat territory. and he did very well in Erie County as well. So he did well in both the suburbs and the working class areas. Another good example is Lackawanna. He won it by like 32, and Biden only won it by 8. So he did very well everywhere. Is what I'm trying to say. And he was an electoral juggernaut, but Tom Wolf is now term limited, so the Democrats are significantly more at risk of losing the seat in 2022 than they were in 2018. But they have a good candidate. Josh Shapiro is the Attorney General. He won re-election by 5 in 2020, meaning he did run 4 points ahead of Joe Biden in the state in 2020. So he's pretty popular there. He's done equally well in the Philly suburbs, and he just does better in rural areas. So I think Josh Shapiro will probably beat whoever the Republicans put up against him, especially if it's Lou Barletta. Lou Barletta lost the 2018 Senate race, and I'll pull it up there, to Bob Casey by 12%. So he did a little better than I'm forgetting the Republican nominees for governor's name, but he did a little better than the GOP nominee for governor, but he still did not do very well. He lost by 12, and I know Bob Casey is popular, but he lost by 12. Should have made it at least a little closer. So yeah, now my computer is deciding to lag, so we're just going to stay on this page until it decides to load, which is not going to be fun for either of us. But while we're at it, Pennsylvania, lean Democrat. So my computer is frozen for now. I'm not sure if I can do anything other than wait, which is less than ideal, because we're kind of just going to sit here in front of this map of Pennsylvania, and I'm not going to edit this out, because this is, some of you guys are going to find this entertaining. Here we go. Okay. Break over. Back to our next lean D state, which is New Hampshire. Long story short, Chris Nuno, I think he's going to run for Senate, and that opens up this seat for Democrats. He won easily in 2018, so with the seat open for Democrats, Joyce Craig probably the nominee. Craig is the mayor of Manchester, which is the largest city in the state. I think the Democrats are going to pick it up. Maine, lean Democrat for now. Paul Lepage, the former governor, is running. Paul Lepage is decent because he's the former governor, but at the same time, he does not have great appeal to some of these, more, I guess, Biden-Collins voters, because Collins won because she was such a well-known figure in Maine, because she said that she'd shaken everyone's hand, kind of thing, like old politician who everyone knows, who everyone trusts. Well, Paul Lepage moved to Florida, and he's only moving back like right now to run for governor. So I'm pretty sure that Janet Mills is gonna use that against him, and it's still a blue state. Like, I know that Susan Collins won a really weird Senate race there in 2020, but it's still a blue state, and I just don't think it's gonna flip. But lean Democrat for now. So four races left to determine the makeup of the NGA. Starting with Arizona, I think Arizona is going to be lean Republican. Now, it really depends on who the candidate is, because if it's Matt Salmon for the GOP, I think the race is a pure toss-up. But I'm assuming their nominee is going to be Kimberly Yee, who is a pretty popular figure there. She won by 9 in 2018 in her treasurer position, which I know treasurer elections not the same as governor Senate elections, because no one really pays attention to them except people on Twitter. But at the same time, it's still interesting that she ran 11 points ahead of Martha McSally in 2018, and she's quite a popular figure there. Now, Katie Hobbs, she picked up the Secretary of State seat in Arizona, I believe. She's either that or Attorney General. I always get them mixed up. But she has a statewide position in Arizona where she won by about a point in 2018. She's a good candidate, but she did run a little behind Sinema. To be fair, Sinema 2018 ran a really good campaign, and Hobbs was not as well known. But Yee and Hobbs are both really good candidates, but I just think in a slightly more Republican year, and where Yee just won by 9 in 2018, I'm just really convinced he's a strong candidate. So I think that Arizona lean Republican for right now, but that could change, especially depending on who the GOP nominee is. Now, Florida, controversial take, but I think Florida's going to be lean instead of likely. Now, on Twitter a couple days ago, I said that, I'm moving Florida from likely to lean in for a couple reasons. One, I think people are just overrating Ron DeSantis in general, and I know I've been guilty of this in the past. People say that I overrate Ron DeSantis too much as the GOP's, kind of messiah for 2024, and I still think he'd beat both Biden and Harris for the record, but he's a little weaker than I originally thought because his family of COVID. There was a point in time where I said, okay, well, he's appealing to the Trumpian base in Florida, where he's not shutting down the state or not imposing mask mandates. Polls have shown that the vast majority of adults in Florida, both Democrats, Independents, and Republicans, support a mask mandate in schools in Florida, which DeSantis has been vehemently against. And, at the end of the day, Florida's still a swing state. People act like it's like a Trumpless 20 state, but he only won it by 3. Florida's closer than both Texas, and it's basically the same level of competitiveness as Michigan. In Florida, there's really no evidence it's trending to the right. There is evidence that Miami-Dade is trending right. It is for sure. But Democrats have been improving in areas like Pinellas, in areas like Duval, in areas like Seminole. So DeSantis, I think, is going to win by 4 or 5, but at the same time, it's not, safe Republican the way some people think it is. So I think, to make this interesting, I'll give Michigan to the Democratic Party. So Michigan, Tilt Democrat Gretchen Whitmer is, right now, in the one poll we've seen, she was leading James Craig by a point, and I think that she is probably going to win this race by a similar margin. But the fact that she's only leading by a point in a poll that, Michigan, polls seem to always overestimate Democratic support there by a lot. So that's concerning for her. She's still, decently popular. She still won by 11 in 2018 against Bill Chouette. So she's still favored to win as of right now. But her opponent, James Craig, is pretty strong. He's a former police chief of Detroit. So I think he can make inroads with suburbanites and black voters in Detroit, because he is a police chief and because police brutality is a issue, especially among white, younger progressives and black voters, as we saw according to exit polls in 2020. So Michigan could be an interesting race, but for right now, I think Gretchen Whitmer is favored. Now, Wisconsin's a pure toss-up, and I'm not going to label it. And I know you guys hate when I do that. I'll give it to the GOP, but it's really a pure toss-up. I don't really want to talk about it too much because it's just so many unknowns there. Tony Evers will be the Democratic nominee, but Rebecca Kleefisch could run for the GOP. It could be Sean Duffy. We really don't know. So I think that for right now, it's a toss-up, but I think the national environment is going to be a little more favorable to the GOP in 2022 than it was in 2020, and Joe Biden barely won Wisconsin. So I think Wisconsin is going to narrowly flip in 2022. Not because Tony Evers is unpopular, not because the Democrats in Wisconsin are collapsing, just because a slight nudge in the GOP's direction could hand them the state. So that's it for this video, guys. I hope you enjoyed. If you did, leave a like, subscribe to the channel if you haven't already, and I'll see you all in the next one.